Late. So when does the recording start? Okay, so this meeting of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee is being live streamed on the Council's YouTube channel. The recording of the meeting will remain online for 4 years, and if you are present in the chamber, you are consenting to appear in the recording and broadcast, which may also be used for training purposes. So welcome everybody. So I've just said to Gloucester City Council's Overview and Scrutiny Committee. So first item on the agenda is just looking around to see if there are any new members or members of staff. No, so in theory, we should all know each other. When you first speak, when you speak for the first time, can you give your name so that people watching online know who you are? So first item is apologies for absence. We've received 2 from Councillor Bell, and Councillor Chambers is attending in his place as a sub. Are there any other apologies, please? Any other apologies? Angela? Sorry.
And Councillor Radley. I believe Joshua Taylor, if he's not been able to come, has been delayed due to pressures of work.
Okay, so declarations of interest. Any declarations of interest? Anybody, please? Any hands going up? No. Declarations of party whipping. Are there any? I'm never quite sure of this. So we're required by law to have this. It was introduced by the last administration.
Well, you're not supposed to have whipping, so it just confirms you haven't had whipping.
It's like, okay. So
Has there been any whipping? Just say that.
Okay. Has there been any party whipping?
No.
Take that to no. So the members happy to approve the minutes of the meeting held on September the 1st. Happy for me to sign those, please? Yep, take that as a yes. And that takes us on to item 5, which is public question time. I have a member of the public there, but not in that capacity, so I take that's a no. Petitions and deputations 0. Action point item 7 to 10. Any questions on that, please, ladies and gentlemen? No. And straight in then to substantive item of financial monitoring quarter 1 report. So Declan, sorry, Steph Chambers, Councillor.
Sorry, Chair. Maybe this is for after, but on the work plan, but there was something listed for today, the qualities plan, and it's not on the paper, so I just wondered where that went.
Declan, as you take your seat, if you can think about introducing your team, please, that would be helpful.
Is this the right one? Okay. On my left, Adrian Walters from Finance, and on my right is Alison Turner, our new head of Finance, who are both supporting me today.
Do you want to say a few words on the report?
Oh, yeah.
On the finances, and we'll take questions.
Need to get my stuff on. Okay, thank you, Chair. Right, before I start, the more observant of you may have noticed that it's a 4-month rather than a 3-month report. Yeah, I'm seeing nods around the table here. The reason for that is that normally this would have come before the committee in September. We sort of had a bit of an emergency going on in September, in fact, August, September, in that, well, it's been well documented now, the problems that we found in the 22-23 and the 23-24 accounts, and discovering that we had roughly 1.5 million less in our reserves than we had previously thought and had been reported to council. So I decided that had to be the #1 priority, because then we had to take this to cabinet and then to council. So in the end, what we have here is a 4-month rather than a normally quarterly one. If you look at the report itself, in many ways it's your normal type of report, but you can't really look at this in isolation anymore, unfortunately, because it's really being presented in the shadow of the, you know, the revised outturn reports for 2022-23 and 2023-24. It has given us a huge financial challenge, and everything really from this point onwards will need to be looked at in this context. In addition, there is extra added uncertainty. As the report explains, the changes to the local government funding landscape are still not defined. The government will not announce the provisional settlement until December. We were hoping we were going to get it before then, but this seems to be a consequence of the budget being later than usual. I think it's happening in November. Now, this will materially affect the money plan for next year, so we will have to do our best in the meantime to use guesswork and guidance until we know what the final figures are going to be. But the good news is it should be a multi-year settlement. It's what should help next year, but the timing this year is not great, and we could do with getting that information sooner. We do have used consultants who are quite good at working out what they think the settlement's going to be, but you cannot 100% rely on that. So it'll be December sometime, and hopefully, well, I suspect it'll be closer to Christmas, but hopefully it'll be earlier than that, because then that's going to make a huge difference to what goes into next year's budget. We also need to be mindful of the costs of local government reorganisation. Irrespective of what arrangements we end up with, the costs of this are going to be significant. So next year's money plan will also need to take this into account. So we will need to think how we are going to finance that, because the information we're getting from the government is that councils are going to have to find this from their own resources, and that will be difficult for ourselves. That said, the report, as usual, summarises everything by portfolio, as per usual. It also lists the actions approved at September Council to deal with the unknown overspends in the previous 2 years before last year. Paragraph 6 outlines the movements in earmark reserves, and Appendix 1 is the capital programme. So happy to take any questions.
Open it up to elected members. And so I said, when you speak for the first time, please just give your name to help people who are watching online. Thank you. Alistair Chambers.
Alistair Chambers, Mappston, Robbinswood, White City. Thank you, Chair. I noticed there's a significant overspend of 256,000 at the crematorium. Is that anything to do with you burying bodies in the wrong graves?
No. What it's to do with is that what we're finding is people are not booking the traditional type of funeral that they used to do even. They're using more sort of like direct crematorium, direct cremations, etc. And how long this is going to continue, whether or not this is a new trend, we're not entirely sure. If you look at the trend and the numbers there, and look at the same report from this time last year, they're very similar. You would expect a negative variance this time of year. And the sad fact is when you get into October, December, or into winter time, the death rates sadly climb. So revenue, for want of a better word, you would expect the revenue to increase then. But having said that, it's one of these things that's very hard to predict. But we do see a trend developing that people are not going in for the more traditional type of service anymore. And of course, we would get extra income from that in the arbor. So it's something we'll need to look at. That's one of the areas I would say would have of concern that we need to look at very closely.
Thank you very much for the detailed answer. You said it wasn't to do with people being buried in the wrong graves. Surely there's a cost of burying somebody, then going to the Home Office, getting an exhumation licence from the Home Office, re-exhuming the body, then reburying the body. Obviously, that won't be a cost down to the grieving families that are obviously devastated by the horrific accident and mismanagement of the council. So on that basis, as it's happened numerous times, surely there would be a cost, and what was that cost?
from memory, I think that happened in the last financial year, not this financial year.
You said that it's a similar trend each year. So on that basis, that there's been bodies buried in the wrong graves, and there's been a similar cost of, you said here, the cemetery's crematorium service is adverse budget by 256,000. A similar trend to previous years. Does that mean that you're losing money each year by burying people in the wrong graves?
I should point out there have been 2 instances that I'm aware of. You could say that reputational damage might be an issue, and the more people repeat those sorts of claims online, the more reputational damage that there is. The issue that we have of the crematorium is it's outlined in the report. We will need to replace the cremators later on in the year, and there's a big couple of programs over the next few years. So we need to manage the demand and then as well. And I think the issue, and you'll probably find it in crematoriums all over the country, is again that people are going for the more direct type of crematoriums or cremations. And if that's the case, when we do the budgets for next year, we might have to take that into account.
Final question to do with crematoriums. You said it's a diverse budget of 256,000, a similar trend to previous years. Why are you consistently budgeting each year £250,000 overspend when you know it's a similar trend to each year? Surely you'll just factor in the £250,000, then be like, oh, it's another £250,000 loss. That's funny. Oh, but it's the same as every other year. It's absolutely ridiculous. Can you explain that, please?
You have to sort of make these. A budget is a target. So we set a target to improve things. It's perfectly legitimate to put that in a target. It's not a forecast. You're talking about a forecast. I'm talking about a budget. So therefore, that's the target that we've set.
Any more questions, Councillor? Councillor Chambers, any more questions?
I've got questions later, but I'll give other people.
Okay, that's really good. Thank you. Terry Pullen, Councillor.
Thank you. Terry Pullen, Councillor for Moorland. A lot of my points you've already covered, actually, quite nicely. Thank you for that. But it does raise this issue, though, doesn't it? Because clearly it says, averse to budget, similar trends to previous years, and, talking about forecasting to reflect trends. And it just does raise the question, are we being realistic? Are we being too ambitious in terms of the income that we're expecting? Which leads me on to another issue, really, about, how are actually budgets set? And let's not just look at the crematorium service, but other budgets. Is this something that the finance team set, or is this something that individual budget managers set? And how does that work? And how can we make sure going forward that the income that we're expecting is actually realistic?
It's individual managers set the budgets for, those figures are then fed up to the senior management team, then ultimately to the cabinet. I take your point that I think we need to improve our budget monitoring and the whole process. I think we need to do an awful lot of work in this whole area, and this is what I shall be doing with Alison here as we look into the process next year. But how we monitor our budgets on a month-to-month basis, I think, could be better, and I think the managers could be more involved. So I take your point. We can always do better, and I think, as you can see in some of these numbers, it sort of shows up. So that's how we will take that on board, and we'll improve things.
If I can just come back on that, because surely if individual budget managers are setting their budgets, then they are responsible for monitoring those budgets and advising the finance team about what is going on. And it just worries me that some managers, I'm sure some managers are doing that very well, but it strikes me from what we're seeing that other managers, there's some learning to take place there, because we've got to get this right.
Absolutely, and I think the link between finance and the rest of the departments could be improved as well. So that's something that I've picked up already. So, and we will see what we can do. I think I'm getting.
Yeah.
Steph Chambers, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. My first question is, there's been some movement in these set of accounts of coming out of the reserves. For instance, the regeneration and leaders portfolio, I think all the reserves are virtually taken out and put into, for that section, 220,000 or something. So that's been moved about. There's a lot of reserves moving. And it said because that was because of this overspend in previous years. What I really want to know, and I think I have addressed this several times before, but I don't think I've had an adequate answer. So in regards to the budget setting, when we set these figures, we had the correct figures in our possession that were published in January. And I've said this a few times, but just to be specific, these figures were in the statement of accounts published in January for the February audit. So on page 4 of the outturn report matches exactly the statements of accounts, page 42, and the statement of accounts, page 29. So either you had these figures, the correct figures for budget spending, for setting, in your possession at that point, where you definitely did, they were in that statement of accounts. So either you knew about those overspends in January, or you missed them when you went through the statement of accounts in January, February. There can't be any other option because they're in there. The figures are in there in black and white, and they were published online at those times. So which is it? Did you really know about those figures? Because I find it hard to believe you didn't, because in my memory and recollection from being in cabinet is you go through these papers with your senior management team, it goes to the leader, and then it comes to cabinet briefing. So did you miss it at every opportunity, or did you know?
I think the bit that you're missing there, the way that this happens, what you're talking about is the draft statutory accounts for 2022-23, which were published in January and then went before the Audit and Governance Committee in February. The way that this works is that the auditors, the statutory accounts are given to the auditors. The auditors prepare an audit report, and they prepare they do a value for money audit, and then they pick these things up, and then what you read and what the audit committee reads is the report from the auditors, where they flag up these issues. There was no value for money audit. There was no report from the auditors. We only discovered these figures in July when we started reconciling the numbers that were in the ledger to the numbers that we had in the reports. And then we suddenly discovered that we had an issue. The report you're talking about is a 80 or 90 page report. And I can tell you that from working in, somebody who's worked as a management accountant in various industries for many years, the statutory accounts and the management accounts are never the same. A standard piece of any audit is you reconcile the management accounts to the statutory accounts. It's a job I remember I used to do every year, and that would then be checked and signed off by the auditors. That wasn't done. So, you know, when you get a report like this, and when it goes towards the audit committee as well, you don't expect the audit committee to take their pens out and start ticking through and checking all the numbers. That's not their job. That's the job of the auditors. And the auditors did not produce any of that material, and it was left to us to find that out ourselves, and to turn around and say that, you know, you should have discovered this in January. That's a bit like the bull going back to the china shop and saying, why have you not cleared this up more quickly? The fact of the matter is these mistakes were made under the previous administration and left for us to clear up. And to dump a set of statutory accounts in January when you're in the middle of your budget process with nothing from the auditors, no reports, nothing flagging up any of these issues. There's no way anybody's going to discover that. And plus the fact that statutory accounts, as I said, and management accounts and reports that go to council are not the same. We rely on the auditors to reconcile one to the other. And as I've said before, this was not done.
Sorry, yeah, my next questions, although the figures are there, they're in black and white, so they were missed. There's no two ways about it, they were missed. So my next question is in relation to the capital programme. There's a long list of capital projects here. So I had a couple of questions in regards to this. So my first question, I'll just read them out first. So the first question would be the temporary housing provision has a section of 752, and then there's another section of housing projects that is quite significant. So my question number one is just what are the housing projects that are in there? 'Cause it's just quite interesting. My next question is in relation to these capital projects. So it's got the amounts that we're having. What it doesn't have is the interest in that column to see what interest we're paying on all those projects. So I'd just be interested to see, well, obviously I know you can't produce this now, but what interest we pay on all those capital projects and how that interest is paid. Does it come out of the revenue budget? Where does it come from each month? So that was that question. That was just the capital programme questions.
Can you remember what was the first one that you mentioned?
It was just, there was temporary housing provision and then there was about 1,400,000 for housing projects. So I just wanted to know what the housing projects are.
It's the disability improvements to houses is the housing projects one. As regards the temporary housing provision, of course it is. Yes, that's what's left really on the temporary provision, the housing, homeless provision, housing. Question about interest. I'm going to hand over to Adrian, who's my technical expert.
Interest on capital projects gets capitalised into the actual asset during the period whilst the asset is under construction or under build. So it doesn't come out of the capital budget per se. It's interest that gets added onto that. It gets added onto that capital asset and then spread over the life of that asset, and it's funded by the income stream that was designed to fund that. Yeah.
Okay, what if the income stream doesn't make enough? So is that then incorporated into a budget for a following year? So the income stream, it goes into that income stream and it's accounted for in that budget?
Yeah, sorry, I was kind of trying to keep it short and sweet and simple. It would essentially, if there was something that cost, so that the asset cost, you have to put aside the funding cost of that. That funding cost would include, if it was 5 million, it would include the principal amount and the interest amount. The interest would, and if there was extra interest on that asset, say it's 6 million, you would have a higher interest amount. That interest amount would get accounted for as part of the following future budgets, and would become part of the. It would have to be covered by income from those future budgets. Yeah, I'll leave it there.
No, thank you, Hadrian. That was really helpful and I understood. Thank you. The only other question I have is in relation to the overspend. I think there was a significant one for about 400 and something in commercial property. And then there was about a 45,000 that I picked up on the museum. And then there was also one for senior management, I think for about 12,000. And I just wondered why there was an overspend on the senior management when there seems to be a lot of vacancies amongst the other departments.
LGR.
So,
LGR. local government reorganisation.
I was under the understanding that they weren't accounting for officer time because there was an email saying there was no officer time were being accounted for LGR.
The senior management cost centre or line in this statement here covers more than just staff. It covers the costs that are associated with the corporate management team, which would include local government reorganisation costs, such as consultants, etc., that are coming through. Now, a lot of that's been covered, but it's just forecasting forwards, and it's potentially, from what I'm hearing, could be lower, could be more than that, yeah.
You asked about commercial property. A lot of that is, again, it's timing. We have a lot of empty units in the Eastgate Shopping Centre, mainly due to Greyfriars. So we're currently moving tenants around to facilitate the work that's about to start. We do have coming on stream new lettings, some renewals and some new lettings themselves. The biggest one so far is Chambers, which has been reported publicly. There are a few others, but unfortunately I can't mention them yet. We are in the middle of a commercial portfolio review, and we're working on a leasing strategy that will help us target new tenants once the final designs for Greyfriars are released. And all else I can say really is that because of the work that's going on at the minute, we're meeting more costs and we're bringing in revenue, but as the year goes on, that should reverse round the other way. So it's one of these sort of things, it's short-term pain, but ultimately, once we get everything up and running and everybody where they should be, things should stabilise and we should get a good, healthy income out of it.
Thank you. And is there any impact of the forum delays impacting that part of the budget? Not getting an income from the car parks or just anything like that, renting out space?
The forum is, I think we budgeted 4 million or something revenue for the forum. And as I think we've already said, that's only going to be about 400,000, but we're mitigating that via capitalising the interest. It is a 40-year project, so then amortising that over 40 years. So one's is sort of mitigating and cancelling out the others. So the bottom line should be roughly neutral. I don't have the exact figures, but it's not as bad as it might be. But I mean, ultimately, once the forum's up and running, you will see it'll be something that will last for years and years. But it's just when you're doing the accounting and getting the thing going in the first instance, there will be some short-term problems. But as I said, we can mitigate that because we are allowed to capitalise the interest. So one will, fortunately, cancel out the other.
Just a last little comment then. So unfortunately, that's going to end up costing, even though it's over 40 years, it's going to end up costing us a lot more, really, because we've got longer interest for longer time and we're not getting an income.
Yes, well, I would say it's not terribly material over a 40-year period.
Thank you if everyone has been helpful.
Okay, so looking around the table, Councillor Alistair Chambers, you had your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. A few moments ago, Councillor Declan Wilson, you mentioned that the 12,000 overspend was for LGR officer time, senior officer time. Freedom of information I inserted into the council 002183 called Costs Incurred for Local Government Reorganisation. And we're writing to request under the Freedom of Information Act 2000 regarding the following: total expenditure to date on local government reorganisation, including but not limited to modelling and scenario planning, public or stakeholder consultations, officer time. Please provide estimates if actual figures are not available, travel, meetings, external consultancy, and any other costs that might be associated. Freedom of Information responded saying there's only one invoice for £30,000, which happened to be £1 under the amount that needed to go out to tender, funnily enough, £1 under, for a consultancy, with a predicted other invoice of another £30,000, which happened to be £1 under the legal requirements under Procurement Act for going out to tender. Funny that, two invoices equaling £60,000 Funny enough, because they're split into two, it fell under. Anyway, going back to what I was going to say, the point is who's not telling the truth? Freedom of information or yourself?
Right. Well, first of all, those costs, I recognise those costs, but we also got a grant of 48,000. So that probably amounts to your 12,000 now when you think about it. But you must remember as well that those two 30,000 invoices, we should be able to claim the VAT back in those. So that'll bring it back down even further. So that the amount we'll spend in total will be pretty negligible, I would have thought.
Sorry, Councillor Wilson, you've misunderstood my question. My question was, freedom of information said there was no officer time and no predicted or future foreseeable officer time to be spent, and they told me no costs had been incurred. You're saying there's £12,000 costs have been incurred. Who's telling the truth, yourself or freedom of information?
Just to confirm, we don't recharge officer time, we don't record officer time, so existing officers working on LGR, that isn't recorded anywhere, so that's correct, but that information isn't available.
Thank you. So where did the 12,000 come from then?
Yeah, sorry, apologies, I keep pressing the wrong button. So there are two invoices for consultants' work, which the 30,000 include VAT, which we'll claim back. So that would total 60,000, including VAT. But we've had a significant grant in from the money that the government gave the Gloucestershire for working on LGR, so we can offset that. So that's roughly about 12,000.
60 minus 48 is 12.
It's actually, you divide it by the 1.2 to get the VAT off. It's not actually 20% straight off. It's 20% if you add it on to the 12,000. If you add it on to the 60, you're actually incorrect there with your figures. However, the point is, so you're saying the £12,000 shouldn't be an overspend of officer time because you're saying it's coming out of the consultancy costs. So why is it still showing £12,000?
Just to confirm that line isn't just officer costs, it includes other things as well, such as consultancy costs for LGR.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Alistair. So we've got Councillor Were you first?
Yes.
I'm relying on the Vice Chair here. So Anne, sorry, okay, you were first. Okay.
Thank you, Chair. My question's regarding the unfortunate that we're not able to invest in the apprenticeship programme in the way that we'd like to, because we've got to try and look at where we can, save money so that we can, act appropriately. I'd be good to understand what impact that's going to have on us and what plans there are in place to mitigate that.
The short answer to that is that, we're reviewing all that at the minute, so I can't give you an answer right now. But as we go further into this process, we'll be able to determine something and let you know. But it's not a situation any of us want to be in, but unfortunately, we have to deal with what we get thrown at us. So, the apprentices, they do perform a function. So therefore, there's going to be a gap there. We're going to have to fill somehow and just work differently. Certainly, we've already gone through one restructuring, which I'm pleased to say didn't result in any job losses, but that should help us move more efficiently. But we will be, again, looking at all of the rest of our processes and see if we can maybe do things a little bit better. But sorry, that's a bit vague, but it's early days as such, so I can't really say anything more at present.
Thank you. If you haven't got the information, there's no point trying to create something that isn't there. So I understand that it's fluid and it's something that's being looked at. So thank you for your honesty.
Okay, thank you. Owen.
Thank you, Chair. Owen Reid, Old Hucklecote. Anne has just asked a question which Declan then answered the question I was going to ask, which was how long is it going to take us to recoup this void in our accounts. And I think Declan has adequately answered that with, I don't know. Thank you.
I think it's worth mentioning, a crucial thing coming up will be the funding review. If you look at the money plan, and its business rate retention, there's quite a big change there. We don't know whether or not that's going to be, how that's going to end, if that's going to end up like that or maybe slightly more favourable. We just don't know. But how that turns out will have a critical impact on the budget that we set for next year. And unfortunately, we're not going to know that answer until December time.
Steph Chambers, yeah, and then Louise. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. There's just couple of things about one of my questions. I think because I asked a few and once we missed the museum overspend, just to see what that was about. So it's just that one first.
So I need to find my papers. Oh, yeah, a lot of works just had to be, the state of the museum building's pretty bad. So we've had to do a lot of repairs on the go. And it's mostly to do with that. But I think in a few days' time, we may be able to announce some good news as regards grants that we've got for the museum, but I can't say anything yet. So I would expect that to improve. But the museum is a bit of a struggle because it's been left to fall into, pretty bad disrepair. And it's something that we are planning to tackle over the next 6 or 7 months. So that is part of that, unfortunately.
So just to clarify, that overspend for the museum is repair works, but then there in the capital programme, there's a £2.4 million for museum building improvements. So that's both of those things are both to do with repairs, is it?
Yeah, at the minute, what we're doing now isn't capital spend. It's repairing things as we go, but it needs a big refurbishment, really, and that's what the capital spend is.
Thank you. And then the other thing, going back to commercial property, museum, etc., I was contacted by a resident in the week, and she commented to me that how the city is looking a lot better. And apologies, this isn't your portfolio, but the city is looking a lot better. She wanted to go to the museum. She was doing things at the library, but she was really, really disappointed and didn't feel particularly safe, should I say, in the city centre because she was going with her 2 small children, walking around the city. There was a lot of antisocial behaviour, shouting, street drinking. So apologies, this isn't yours, but is there still an element? I know we've released the 200,000 for engagement officers, but what about the city protection officers and things like that? What's going on with the city centre? Because it's not nice to hear that we're doing all this work, making the city look aesthetically good, but we've still got a lot of antisocial behaviour ongoing where residents are feeling unsafe and they don't want to go to the museum or they don't maybe want to use the shops and businesses don't want to invest in the city when that's what they're faced with.
I'll leave that for Rebecca whenever she might want to mention that whenever she's up, rather than for me to stray into her portfolio and get her into trouble.
So notice there was quite an overspend in the community budget, so I just wanted to see what's going on. We're having this overspend, but then we're not seeing any improvements in that respect.
Well, overall, the community budget looks reasonably okay. I know in material terms, it's not, I haven't gone into the detail of those numbers, if I'm honest, simply because I've been focusing on the big numbers. So what was the question again?
Just really, what was the overspend in those areas if it's not making improvements to the city centre?
I can get that information to you. I don't have it on me now.
Thank you. And just to clarify, I wasn't saying anything about the audit committee or criticising them, really it was more towards the administration who have those papers in advance and they go through a process of looking at them several times with officers. So that was my criticism, nothing to do with the audit committee.
Although in all fairness, those papers did go before the audit committee in February.
Yeah, they would have gone through you several times before that. Well, they always used to before we put papers.
Finished around about 25th of January, something like that, and then the audit committee met a few weeks later. So, and as I said, I wouldn't blame the audit committee for not picking that up either, because what the audit committee is supposed to do is they're supposed to listen and get a report from the auditors and listen to what the auditors are telling them, and the auditors then give them the steer. If they've gone through any issues that they've discovered, they are statutorily obliged to report to the audit committee, and then the audit committees are the ones that then have to decide how to take that further. The audit committee or the audit and governance committee, they didn't get that information either, so I wouldn't blame them in the slightest. The fact of the matter is that just dumping a set of documents somewhere with no context, with nothing from the auditors, is not the right way to do things. And unfortunately, it's only when we got done and did the donkey work ourselves in June, July time and started trying to reconcile the numbers back, that is when we discovered that we had a serious problem.
Mr Chambers, councillor.
Thank you, Chair. Commercial property.
Oh, I slipped up there. I do apologise. Louise, you were trying to come in. I apologise. Well,
That's okay, thank you, Chair. Councillor Walker for Abbeydale. My question just relates to paragraph 511, where you're commenting on there's a favourable variance to a certain degree because there are still vacancies to be filled. I mean, I just wondered if you could give us just an example of what sort of level the vacancies are at. Senior, middling, junior, and also you've mentioned a couple of areas that are really quite significant. I think there's finance and IT. I mean, it'd just be interesting to get an idea of what sort of vacancies you're talking about, because I'd be less concerned about someone, if it was a vacancy for someone who does some maintenance on the public-facing website, compared to perhaps someone who's maintaining the firewall or to do with cybersecurity or some other critical software. Thank you.
I can assure you we will, anything to do with cybersecurity will not have any vacancies. There are some vacancies in the sense there always are, but what we are doing is that there isn't a recruitment freeze. Let's just get that out there. First of all, there isn't. It's just that any vacancies that come up, we're looking at very closely to see if there's any way we could do it within our existing resources. So we're being a bit more careful because we have to. But it is possible that we've just done for example, in revenue and benefits and finance, we've done a restructuring where we've transferred some roles across, and that frees up resources in its own and puts things more where they should be. And it'll be more along the lines of trying to do things more efficiently, because it's like in any organisation, over time, you get these rigid structures and it isn't necessary. A lot of the roles that are done could have been in the past that we outsourced something, and so therefore the bits that one outsourced sat in another department, they could be sitting somewhere else now that we've no longer have these functions outsourced. It's things like that. It's all quite complex, but it is certainly not. We will make sure that all these areas are properly resourced, and certainly, as you say, cybersecurity will be properly resourced. I can assure you of that because I have meetings about that quite often. Oh, and by the way, there are a few councillors who haven't done their training. If I can just use this as a plug, just the few that are left, if they could do their cybersecurity training. Many thanks.
That's okay, thank you. As long as you're confident there really are no missions that are critical vacancies still open.
It's not in our interest to do that.
we'll begin to wrap it up. I've got a few questions. So before I do, though, yeah, sure. Alistair Chambers, councillor.
Thank you, Chair. Am I right in thinking that the overspend for the last 3 years was a circular about 500,000 and hence the reason we've got the black hole of approximately 1.5 million. Is that correct?
Sorry, I don't understand the question.
Sorry, the black hole that's been mentioned about in the council's finances, it's circular 450,000, 500,000 per year, which over the 3 years, which created the 1.2, 1.5 million. Is that correct?
Yeah, I can tell you exactly what it is. In the 2 years, we're talking about 22, 23, 23, 24, the overspend reported to council was 278,000 in the first year, 288 in the second. When we finally tied all that back to what was actually in the ledgers, for 22, 23, there was an extra 457, which hadn't been reported. So that gave a total of 735. In 23, 24, 288 is reported to council. That was the number that we based all our budget, etc. on. There was a further 538 that wasn't reported. And then there was an extra 360, which related to the Aspire going out of business. So 22, 23, the actual overspend was 735,000. In 2023, 24, it was 1.2 million. And just for context, last year it was 262. So I put it on a graph for you so you can see. And there you can see there, that was the previous, the administration for the previous 2 years, and that was us last year. So you can see the extent of the challenge. So if I was facetious, I would say, well, we got that down nearly 80% from the previous year before, but even that is not, we need to do better than that still. So those are the numbers that make up what you might call the black hole. In effect, it was, I think, about 995, which was underreported, plus the 360 as far.
So going by your figures, 457 was the overspend, which wasn't allowed for in 2022, 2023. Is that correct?
So 457 was the number that wasn't reported. Yeah.
Thank you. So on that basis, 457,000, you're losing here an overspend of 467,000 just on commercial property alone in this budget. So that's 10,000 over the overspend that wasn't even known of under the previous administration. So you're actually 10,000 over on the whole overspend on 2022, 2023, on one single item alone based on these accounts. And what's more worrying is this is commercial property. This is property where you should be making an income, and you're losing £500,000 on one item. This is actually significantly worrying. On that basis, what are you going to do to turn around commercial property? Because this is obviously very concerning.
Well, on your point about 457,000 in one line, you're effectively just cherry picking one line and the rest, and you're ignoring all the rest of it. Because overall, we are saying that we are going to slightly be better than budget. But as you said, it's a fair question. And what are we going to do? Well, as you probably know, and I found my piece of paper again because I've got quite a lot. As I've already explained, we are working on a leasing strategy, and we are already signing up new tenants to come into around King Square and the shopping centres. The only one I can say so far is the Chambers one. So that will be improved. And once Greyfriars gets up and running and we start filling those units again, that will be improved as well. So yes, there will be a short-term negative impact on that one particular item, but we do have positives elsewhere. And over the years, that commercial property will bring the council in a good income. But as you said, these are all long-term things.
Okay, so it's my turn. So Councillor Chambers isn't cherry picking, is he? He's spotting and he's identifying the figures which are of most concern to all of us sat around the table. The figure of 467,000 projected this year is incredibly serious. It's even more serious when you look at the same figure last year, where the outturn was 171,000. So we've gone from 171,000 in the financial year ending March this year to already 467,000 in the first 4 months. Can I just confirm I've got my figures right? Because this is all entirely very, very complex. So those are the right figures, aren't they? 171,000 outturn for March financial year. $500,000. That's some change in the wrong direction.
Yeah, but this time last year, we didn't have the grade. Back in your comment, criticism of me saying cherry picking. What Councillor Chambers was doing was he was picking an entire previous year and an entire previous year before that, and then comparing it to one line and then saying that they were both compatible when they're not. If you look at the last 2 years, I don't know, drunken sailor on leave, is that a good one? Or was that unkind to sailors? I don't know. But there would have been individual lines in those numbers that would have been particularly bad, and there would have been others that were quite good. The fact of the matter is you cannot pick one line in 1 year and compare it to an entirety another year on an entirely different year. That was the point I was making. But nevertheless, you do say that 457, that is a serious issue. But if all things were, if this year was exactly the same as last year, and there was no big projects going on, I would agree with you. But there is a big project starting. It's called Greyfriars. Some of us have seen the plans, and the rest of us will see them soon. So that's going to have a short-term impact in some of the revenue. That's just a fact of life. But the problem is when you start thinking of long-term projects, if you start thinking short-term, you start making mistakes and you rush things. I would rather do it properly. And the same with the forum. I would rather do it properly. In 20 years' time, people will not remember that you might have been a few months late or 5 months late. The fact of the matter is that there are reasons behind these. But as you said, we will be reviewing the whole asset management strategy and commercial property strategy, because that hasn't really been done over the last 3 years, but we will improve that.
So I do have a couple of more questions, but just for clarity, apologies if you were offended by me picking up on the cherry picking points that Alistair, you allege Alistair was making. But it's impossible not to, it's impossible for these figures not to hit you, between the eyes, on the nose, on the chin, wherever, because they are big figures, and the trend is in entirely the wrong way. It's going from 171,000 deficit loss last year to 467. That's a huge jump, Declan. Just confirm those figures are correct, even if they are cherry-picked, as you like to call them.
Are you comparing with figures from last year?
Sorry?
Sorry. The line I'm looking at says commercial property, actual negative for the year to date, 367,000, and year estimate 2.9 million. Is that the one you're talking about?
We'll check. We can check with Hadrian afterwards. The figures I obtained was 171,000
Oh,
deficit
right, okay.
for this year, current financial year.
You're talking about 24, 25?
Yeah.
Okay, I don't have those in front of me.
Okay.
Unfortunately.
But the figures are going the wrong way. That's my point.
Yeah,
In a big
but
way.
and the point I'm making is that there is huge change going on. As I said, Greyfriars, and also we're getting King's Walk and the Forum, etc., up and running.
Sure.
So that's the reason why. So you're going to get these fluctuations.
Oh, sure, I get that. So Declan, in the cabinet, in my take, you've got the toughest job. You've got to get the figures to balance, and you've got to come in on the nose. And I think we all recognise that. And please don't take any of this personally. We're sent here by the people, I'd say endlessly, in our areas to speak up and to find out what's going on. So in terms of what's going on, picking up on the points that Councillor Steph Chambers was making about the forum, there is a financial consequence, isn't there, to the finance of the forum because of the long run-in and the fact that it's not yet completed. That difference between the original forecast is made up of extra expenditure required by extra debt. And that you say, well, don't pay too much attention to it because that debt is capitalised and the figures will be minimal. Don't worry about it. But I don't lose I would like to know, and I've tried hard to get what this figure is. What is the sum that you capitalise? What is the extra income that's required to finance the forum because it's not completed on time, which you, quite rightly probably, have capitalised to minimise the impact? There is a figure, and I've worked so hard to try and find out what that figure is, but nobody will tell me.
Yeah, first of all, as regards, I got a little bit hot-headed there. Yeah, I appreciate your comments there, Andrew, sometimes.
It's watching both of us, I'll tell you. What do you say? Not doing anything.
Can I just say, he's a very nice monitoring officer, great guy. Anyway, I think Hadrian might be the best to explain the exact numbers. I've only got very broad numbers in my head, and sometimes that's not necessarily the best place for them. So I'll just hand you over to Hadrian.
I haven't got those numbers available to provide in terms of the actual total interest that's capitalised in at the present moment, but I can go away and get that number. Some of it is still under commercial negotiation. As an aside, I would actually like to correct some of the mistakes that have been made. I'm going to speak out to you. Both the 22-23, and it's possibly the way I presented it, was presented it in those reports. The 22-23 and the 23-24 outturn reports had reserve releases of 400,000 and 322,000 respectively. And that was in the reports because I've got them open in front of me. Those were shown as movements in the reserves, referred to as movements in reserves. Those were taken against the different lines in the budget. Whether that was right, whether that was wrong, matter of debate. So out of that 1.5 million that is constantly being quoted, 722,000 was reported. And the reality is there was a casting error in the money plan reserves. And that will be picked up.
Can you say that bit again? I'm sorry. Adrian, I do apologise for interrupting you, but I couldn't quite hear the first part of the last sentence.
In reality, what I'm trying to say is there was in the reporting that was done in terms of the revenue outturns for both 22-23 and 23-24, there were reserve releases, and they are in the table of reserve releases. And that is part of that 1.5 million. It doesn't mean there wasn't additional amounts discovered as further work's been done. And what happened there will be reported on later. But just wanted to clarify that. In terms of the interest that's capitalised, as you've asked Councillor Gravels, Chair, I will go away and we will come up with, we will give you the number that has gone into the statutory accounts. We're still working on the final number for 24-25, and we will provide that. That then gets, in essence, that number gets capitalised in, yes, and there will be, as you quite rightly say, there will be a cost of debt on top of that, or that's an additional cost of debt that we weren't in our original business case. But as Declan's quite rightly said, the actual commercial properties contribute 2.9 million. The budget for 25-26, I'm in the wrong year again there, 25-26, fully expected the forum to have started, income streams to have started coming in to be practically complete. At the time of the budget, it was expected March, April. So we've got a full year in there. There are additional costs that are coming through. They get capitalised in, they will get spread over the future. And as I answered to Councillor Stephanie Chambers, those will be built into future budgets. In essence, the reality is it's a 40-year spread of a number and that number reduces the return on investment that we were hoping to get, but it's by points of percentages as opposed to taking us the other way.
So just two more questions from me, and I'll be very brief. So just repeat what I often say. This is just to everybody. This is a scrutiny committee. Nobody should ever take from that because we're scrutinising, we don't support a particular project. And I had to clarify things at the last city council meeting to say I was a member of the cabinet that supported that financed the forum, and I'm still very proud of that decision. And I think all of us are proud of that decision. So just two more questions from me. I'm trying to be so brief and talk very quickly. So I sent some questions to Alison and about the different issues around the alleged overspend and so on. And I think I don't want to misinterpret what you said, Alison. You said something like, or words to the effect, Councillor Gravels, the questions you raise will be looked at by the inquiry that's being set up. I think that's a fair recollection, if that's what you said. So following on from that, Declan, can you tell us, please, who will be doing the inquiry? How much will it cost? And I asked you at the recent seminar, can you guarantee that it will be completed by the start of the budget cycle for 26, 27? And at our pre-meeting, that seemed to be quite a popular view that the review, the inquiry should be completed by the start of the budget process for the next financial year. And that wasn't an issue of, I didn't detect anyway, any particular disagreement with that. But I think a lot's riding on this inquiry. And I don't think that the one is separate to, I don't think that is separate to the budget setting process. The feeling was the two go together hand in hand. So that's my first question. And then my last question is in the commentary on the paper, this finance paper, at the end of paragraph 5.6, the start of 5.6 says commercial property portfolio is adverse to budget by 467k, and then it goes on and on and on about what it is. The last sentence says, this is a key area where further work is required to identify the realistic financial position. That's actually quite a scary sentence, isn't it? This is a key area of further work where further work is required to identify the realistic financial position. What extra work are you going to be doing to ensure that we all know what the realistic financial position is?
First of all, on the review, well, as regards budget cycle, the budget cycle is really already started, but it is our plan to have the review go to Cabinet in December. So that's our timetable. I'm going to pass you to Alison's regards who's doing it and how much it's costing.
Okay, thank you. So the review is going to be carried out. We've asked our internal auditors to carry out the review, and they are contracting it to Lighthouse, who do quite a few sort of audits on their behalf, and they've done audits for us before. So the review is going to be carried out by them. It's going to be presented to Cabinet in December as the Cabinet requested the review, and the scope of the review is based on the recommendations that came out of the Cabinet. It's quite detailed. What was the cost? And sorry, I knew you'd asked me something else. I can't remember what it was. Because we've already got an audit plan with the internal auditors that we've got so many days. I've moved stuff around so that it's contained within the overall audit plan. So I've had to defer another audit that wasn't as high priority as this to make sure I've got days towards this. So no additional cost.
So that's really helpful, and thank you for easy to follow replies. Just looking at my colleague Lauren here, hopefully that's something we can get into our forward plan for December, pre-budget and pre-cabinet, so we can take a look at this report.
Yes, yeah, we'll have to timescales because it's going to be quite a tight timescale to get it ready for the 10th of, I think it's 10th of December Cabinet. But yes, absolutely.
So from memory, right at the beginning of the month, so it's going to be something like the 3rd or 4th of December. The 1st, okay. So that ties in. If you can tell the independent auditors if they could look at that deadline, please, I'd be grateful. and the committee would be grateful.
Okay, I will speak to.
And sorry, there was some misunderstanding whether or not that report would go to audit or to this committee. Hopefully it would come to this committee. We're doing the budget scrutiny.
But the actual report is going to go direct to cabinet, because it was cabinet that requested it. But yeah, if overview and scrutiny are requesting it to come here, then I don't see that that's any problem.
Sorry, sorry, I'm just being reminded that the budget scrutiny is January the 6th, 19th. But we're keen to see this report before that begins. So if our scrutiny ONS is December the 1st, that fits in well with your timeline, and we'll look forward to receiving it. Declan, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so Alison, thank you for your questions, and I get told off for going into VAT inspector mode sometimes. Hope it wasn't too much like that. Thank you. Oh, I thought we were finishing. There's loads of people want to speak now. I thought I was wrapping it up. Oh, so we've got, I want to tell you, we've got a long list. Can everybody try and be very brief, kids? We've got the City of Sanctuary report, yeah? Is that okay? Brief. So Steph Chambers, Karen, Anne, and I can't read your writing. Terry. I said Jerry. Okay. So Steph, thank you.
Thank you. And it is just in response to a couple of things that Councillor Wilson said that I just wanted to clarify. Now, the first thing I want to clarify in regards to the overspend is that what you've got to remember, calling us like drunken sailors overspending, we acted on, as did all the officers, on the figures that they had in their possession at the time. Nobody was thinking, oh, we'll willy-nilly spend this or spend that and we'll keep spending because we just feel like it. It was actually because, and this is not an excuse, but it is a fact, is the cyber incident put us in a bad position in regards to how the accounts were being done. Officers were working extremely hard. They were giving us the figures that they believed were correct and we were acting on them. So nobody was acting willy-nilly like drunken sailors and overspending. And the finance team, other than the cyber incident, had lots of issues that they had to deal with, and they did a fantastic job with what was going on at the time. So I just want to thank them for all the work that they were doing under really, really difficult circumstances. The other comment that you made was that you're doing things and you can't look at everything because you've got a significant big project of Greyfriars going on. Now, over the course of our administration and throughout this time, this city council has worked on big projects. We were working on the forum. There was the Brownfield release bids. We bid for the Greyfriars project. That took on a lot of time. There was the King's Square work that we did. So there's always big projects going on. So you can't use that as an excuse. And then the other thing I just wanted to clarify is, so you keep talking about a 1.5 million black hole. Well, actually, that was 778,000. Now, I'm not limiting that figure because, you know, that's a huge figure to find. So I'm not saying it isn't, but let's stop. Let's just stick to the facts and let's deal with it as it is. There's 778 that you weren't aware of, apparently. So just those four things. Thank you.
Oh, right, okay. Yeah, the drunken sailor remark, that was just an off-the-cuff remark. Well, thank you, Jeremy. The other thing as regards this, the 1.5 number, the 1.5 number is the difference between what we thought we had in reserves and what we actually did have in reserves. That's where it comes from, and it's actually in the report if you read it. You know, we can sort of argue about the detail, but nevertheless, it was a pretty shocking discovery to make. Having said that, I do understand that there was a cyber attack. I think, if I'm honest, the issue is, did we have enough? I think, and this, I'm not going to tell the reviewers how to do their job, but the key question to me is, did the finance team have enough resources? Because it took a very long time to sort this out, and in many ways we're still coming up with cyber attack related problems, and I'm wondering that was this taken, seriously enough? And it'd be interesting to know what discussions were had in Cabinet at the time, because I certainly remember I was constantly raising it as both Chair of Audit and Governance and in motions to Council and questions to Cabinet, because I was concerned that what potentially might happen, what the consequences might be. But as I said, it will be interesting to see when the reviewers have a look at this, because we as a council, we've been going around the country. In many respects, our recovery from the cyber attack in keeping services going, etc., was very good in my view. But this was, I think, where we had a blind spot. And when we go and advise other councils in the future about what to do in the event of a cyber attack, maybe this is something that we should add to our presentations, that whatever you do, make sure your finances are up and running again as quickly as possible. And maybe that should have been a greater priority. But I do accept that keeping services going was also a pretty big priority as well. So I think there will be valuable lessons, not just for us, but to the country as a whole, to learn from this, because I think you can all see in the news that cyber attacks are now becoming more common. And anything that we can learn from that, and we can pass it on to other local authorities and other bodies, particularly ones that might be affected by something like this in the future, will be only for the good. So I would personally like to move on from our sort of the numbers, etc., and everybody accept that we do have a problem here, and we need to sort of start working to sort of get us, to sort of get over this and get us, all of us, into a better place. So, and I hope the review concentrates how we're going to get to that better place and make sure we're more resilient in the future.
Okay, Declan. So again, can I just repeat, Karen, can we keep it, I appreciate, Karen, you haven't spoken yet, but if we can just keep the questions and the answers, Declan, really very concise, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Karen James, Councillor for Kingsway. I just wanted to ask Declan that it's nice to see that we are getting more people moving into properties in the city centre, and that you're doing a full audit of all the empty properties. Can I ask, in line with the Labour motion on high street rental auctions, that the results of that audit on the empty properties is made available to all councillors, please?
That's a yes or a no?
Well, I guess that's a yes, because that will be...
Okay, well done. Okay, that's really fine, excellent. So we've got Anne.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted a little bit of clarification. We're talking about the forum, and because it's running late, we are getting extra costs. What mitigation was in place in terms of penalty payments to sort of offset the lateness?
I can't go into detail on that, but there are. That's all I can say. Don't worry. We're being tough negotiators. I can't say any more than that.
Whoa, are you able to get the councillor and the rest of this committee a confidential explanation as to what that is, please? Because we can't just leave that in the air. I think we're entitled to know.
Maybe when the project's over.
Looking at the monitoring officer to help me, why can't we ask the cabinet member to supply that information in response to Anne's question to all of us?
It would be confidential, so if you wanted to talk about it tonight, you'd have to go into confidential. I think the problem is that you won't exactly know until the project's over. So you would have a report at the end of the project of what has happened. It's all a bit speculative at the moment.
So are we entitled to have a report including what the penalty charges were for the overrun and financial implications for the council?
My understanding is that's the offer, that once the project is complete.
So Anne, hopefully it won't be too long. Are you okay with that? Because I think that's a good move.
Yeah, recognising you won't know until the end of the project because it's ongoing. I think once it's concluded that information comes back, that would answer my question. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Declan. That's helpful. And now it's Jerry. Sorry, Terry. Your writing's right, Terry. case, thank you. Okay, so Declan, first of all, thank you and your team. Declan, thank you and your team for your courtesy and for the efficient and courteous way you've dealt with all of our questions. Bit of a marathon for you this evening, but thanks to both of you, all three of you, I apologise for your attendance. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Okay, do we want to plough straight on, or anybody want to go straight for 2 minutes? Plough straight on, okay. So Rebecca Trimble, your moment has arrived. Thank you so much. So, Rebecca, thank you, and Ruth for coming along. Sorry that took a bit of time. So, thank you for your reports. We've all read them, and there are some questions coming. So, Ruth or Rebecca, would you like to say a few words, or would you just like us to get stuck in?
Let's just get stuck in, shall we?
I just want to see who, thank you, wants to see who wants to go first with any questions or comments to Ruth or to Rebecca. No questions or comments? Olwen.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, you thought you'd get off scot-free. To me, this is all about kindness and being the right kind of society that we are. Not all of us are born and bred in Gloucester. You know, some of us come from elsewhere, but we come to Gloucester because we choose to. And we should be creating a society where people choose to be here, who feel welcomed to be in the city and who want to stay here and contribute to the city. And I think setting ourselves up as a city of sanctuary means that people will see us as a place that is welcoming and that they want to be in. That's what I've read in this so far. Thank you.
Tree.
Thanks. Oh, can I just respond to Alwyn, actually? Yep. Just to say that for context, really, I didn't want to say too much at the introduction because I wanted us to get straight into it. So we all know that this was a motion to council that was brought by the Labour group back in 2021. And it was actually amended by the Conservative group and then supported unanimously. Let's not forget that since then we've got a brand new lot of councillors, brand new administration. I wasn't even a councillor back then, and I certainly wasn't a cabinet member back then either. But you've said it exactly, Alwyn. That was the whole point of this scheme. And we had a briefing for members, which I did come in late to, but I have today listened right back through the presentation that we had, where Ravona and the councillor lady came and she gave a very good presentation on what the City of Sanctuary was all about.
So, and that's exactly what it's all about. Thanks, Alan.
Thanks, Rebecca. Steph? Tree?
3 years and 11 months. How has it taken this long to get to this point?
You've raised a question which I have been rattling around in my brain for quite some time. The actual motion stipulated that, in fact, that it should have come back 12 months after it was first debated, which was, if you look back, which should have been 2022. We've looked back and it didn't come to Cabinet, and that was during the Conservative administration. It has come back now because the situation is that the briefing session, it was recognised that it had been dropped off the radar, and it was thankful to your own chair, Councillor Andrew Gravels, who then rose it out of the ashes, so to speak. But it is a piece of work that actually does need a lot more work. There is a lot of work that has been done in the background. And if it's something that we feel we do still want, that accreditation, I know again it was a Labour motion, it was amended by the Conservatives and it was back then voted unanimously, we can still push it through. That said, I do think it's important to emphasise that as Gloucester, we are a welcoming city. And what we need to ask is, do we need such accreditation to go forward in order to just recognise that we are a welcoming city? Back then, I completely appreciate why the Labour Party brought it to the council and why the Conservatives amended it. But I think we do need to be mindful now. We need to be mindful because of the resource implications of it, what due diligence that needs to be done to make this really work, or whether there is actually another way that we can go forward, where we internalise, bring it back in-house, really look at different options and not necessarily go through this accreditation route. So I think it's really important for me to say that on the offset. This isn't in our corporate plan as an administration, and none of the other parties actually asked to put it into the corporate plan. So I do wonder whether there is appetite to keep pursuing something which could actually be done differently. So therefore, I'm opening it to you as members of the scrutiny to actually let me listen to what your recommendations could be in maybe going forward with this or looking at it in a totally different way. Thank you.
Can I come back on that? So this lack of appetite, potentially, for going for City of Sanctuary, is that actually about resourcing and things? Or is it about a small minority of people who shout very loudly some very hateful and appalling things, actually meaning that as a council, we are bowing to that sort of behaviour?
I think it is about resources. I do think in terms of those people that are explicitly, maybe have no appetite, I think we can say that there are those members as well. We're in very sensitive times. You know, we can see that. That's not to say that we aren't a welcoming council to those who are seeking asylum or refugees. And I actually stand on a platform from a party that welcomes everybody. That said, I don't know whether our value is in going ahead with this accreditation or actually doing the work ourselves, because it could be that we're doing this work anyway. And do we actually need a sticker, a label, to actually say what we're already doing and paying external companies to be telling us what we should be doing, which we are already doing, if that makes sense. But that said, you know, if we do have the appetite for it, and I'm saying this because it's not in our corporate plan, then by all means, as the Cabinet member, then I will certainly push this through as hard as I can with the officers that I have.
Personally, I think that we need to push this through now more than we did 4 years ago. Because the way things are at the moment, people are getting the impression that the louder you shout, the more obnoxious you are, and the more hate that you spread, you will get your way. And we need to make it very, very clear and put our heart on our sleeve here about the fact that in Gloucester, we do not accept intolerant, hateful behaviour. People are entitled to their views, but they are not entitled to intimidate and to spread hate.
Thank you, Tree, for that endorsement. And I think that's really loud and clear. So if I hear that from across this chamber, across from this committee this evening, then what I will personally do is go back to the officers. We will make sure that the resources are with an officer in order to really take this further. At the presentation, there was an action plan. Some of that is in this, what you've seen tonight. That needs just pushing. And I can give you my assurance that if this is something that we want to take further, take forward, then there will be that push with particular officers within this council that will need to do this work. And as you say, it needs to be done in a really timely manner, because we cannot wait, and we certainly cannot wait another 4.5 years for it to then come back to this committee again with no work done on it.
Steph and then Terry. So.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, and being the only one from the last cabinet that is here, I can acknowledge that it has taken a long time within our period as well. But I just wanted to mention within that time period, we also were dealing with the Homes for Ukraine. So it was better to get on with the actual work of making sure all that was set up and everything was done appropriately for that really critical situation that we dealt with. So, and obviously a lot of work, there was a lot, we were doing all the inspections of all the properties. There was a lot of work that went on in regards to that, and joint working with the county with that as well. So just to acknowledge that it has taken a long time, but we were dealing with a lot of unprecedented things in that manner. And I think the amendment that went through was that we were, although it was acknowledged it was not going to be done immediately, that we would embed all these principles within the work that the council was doing. And I think that is important to recognise. And I truly believe that this council has done that with lots of the decisions that were made, work that was done at Wheatridge Court, etc. So I think that was really important to acknowledge. One thing in relation to the policy, and to acknowledge what Councillor Trimble was saying, is it would be interesting if there was some sort of cost analysis to how much it costs to do the accreditation compared to, it's sort of tick chart comparison over incorporating this in all the work we do compared to what it takes to get the accreditation, because I'm not that bothered about a badge as long as we are doing the work that needs to be done. There were just a couple of things in regards to the report that I read. Was one thing that it mentioned, and I think it is important, is about interviewing migrants who live in the city to identify any improvements, etc. And I think that is an important piece of work. But secondly, to then obviously not ignore residents that have been here a long time and get their take on things and how they think things could be improved. So there's that element. The other thing was that when I was in that cabinet position, I do recall that Gloucester was doing significantly more than a lot of the other surrounding towns, not just in the southwest, because I think the report compares us with the southwest, but I'm talking about our more immediate neighbours. And the reason I mention that is because if you get a city that is dealing with more within an area, that residents do get upset and they think, why can't I get, why are we dealing with more of the pressures on our services here? And I'm not saying we shouldn't be doing that, but I'm just saying everybody should be doing their fair share of it. So residents within our area aren't feeling like they're getting hard done by in Gloucester paying, but also suffering for services that they're losing out on because we've got an extra population. And that's not to say we shouldn't be, I'm just saying it needs to be fair, just to keep people on a balance and not upset with it, because we do know not everybody is promoting hate, but some people are just generally worried about services and the impact that an extra population can put on that. So I think we do need to acknowledge there are a lot of people that sit in the middle of this conversation that are just generally concerned about services and the extra impact, and some of the people coming in illegal or on the boats, etc., just to worry about the vetting, etc. And I'm not making any comment about that, but people do have genuine concerns. So just to mention that. The other thing about a welcoming city is in regards to, obviously you heard what I said earlier about the resident that said going into the city centre, it's looking great, but sometimes the antisocial behaviour can be off-putting for people. I think my analysis of this would be, is if it's going to cost us a significantly more amount of money to get the accreditation side of this, wouldn't that be better spent on tackling some of the issues that make the city not so welcoming? That would be my point of view. So that's just my comments for now.
Thanks for that, Stephanie. I might let Ruth come in on one of them in terms of the interviewing the migrants, because I know that's something that an officer of ours are looking at doing and possibly has already done. In terms of the financial implications of this, I think that would be a good piece of work just to do that cost analysis of how much it would cost for an officer to really spend their time on this. Or to have it so it's implemented throughout the work stream without having the accreditation. There is always resource implications in these things. And I think sometimes, and with especially this sort of project, because it is such a long-term project, it is really hard to actually know how much it is going to cost us at the end of the day. Like, we can pay our fee as such to be part of the City of Sanctuary network, but then there's a lot of ticking the right boxes and doing the right things in order to really establish that. So I think that would be a really good piece of work to do. And in order to do that, we'd probably be able to feed back to you. I don't know what time frame that is, or we'll just send an email out to all of you as committee members. So that might be the best approach of doing that. In terms of the antisocial behaviour in the city centre, it's really interesting that you said you heard some woman who said that she doesn't feel safe walking through the city. I'm actually getting quite a lot of feedback where there has been a reduction in antisocial behaviour, actually. There is a massive, well, I'm saying massive, that's a slight exaggeration, but there is a police presence now that you can see going around the city. Our engagement officers are working with the CPOs. I'm getting regular sort of feedback on what sort of things that they're dealing with, which, you know, their work is totally valuable. So that's not to say that there's more to be done in terms of the whole antisocial behaviour, but I do feel that there has been a significant reduction, and we just have to keep at it, really, in terms of that. Can I just bring Ruth in terms of the interviewing side of things? Yeah.
Okay, so in terms of interviewing of migrants, so some of that work has been done, and I think one of the things that has been done quite a lot of with the City of Sanctuary work is that community engagement on the ground. So the bit that we've not been able to achieve, because it's a different skill set and we need to work out how do we meet the challenges of applying for the accreditation, is more of a policy officer role. So we've been doing the work out in the communities, we've been doing some interviews, we've been doing some surveying, but what we now need to do in order to take this work forward is write a strategy, and we need to write the application for accreditation. We need to review all of our policies and how we can embed some of what we've heard out in the community in the council's ways of working. So, you know, I'm sure you can all recognise that that's a different skill set. So we need to look at how we resource that. So, you know, as I've said, some of those interviews have happened and they will continue to happen. The cost of the accreditation is negligible, actually, but it is the cost of the officer time to do the writing of the strategy, the embedding of all of the values in all of our policies and procedures, as well as making the application, which is, you know, a relatively lengthy process. So, you know, as Councillor Triminal has said, we're happy to go away and look at how we can resource that effectively, if there is the will of the council to continue this work. Because I think one of the things about City of Sanctuary is about us as a council saying we
we agree that Gloucester is a welcoming place and we stand by that, and we want to make sure that maintains, you know, it continues to be the case. So if our councillors are saying that, and that is what the council want, then that is what we will continue to do. Just picking up on the point about the density of migration, that is definitely something that we work with the Home Office on, and there have been situations over the last couple of years, as you'll be aware, Councillor Chambers, where we have pushed back to the Home Office because the density is getting too much in a very small area. And I think, you know, our role as a council is to ensure, you know, mixed and balanced communities, because that's how communities work best, and that is where diversity flourishes. Whereas if you overpopulate with a certain group, then sometimes that causes some issues. So we do work with the Home Office, and we do push back to the Home Office where we can. We do have limited power over central government, but we do try and work with them as effectively as possible. But we also have community cohesion as a standing agenda item on the Community Safety Partnership. So where we are recognising that there might be some issues, that is discussed in a partnership approach. So with, you know, a number of multi-agency partners, including the police, including healthcare, including education. So we do try and pick up these things as they occur.
Thank you, Ruth. Just to come in on that about the discretion, we have very little discretion. I know you're saying about working with the Home Office, which is, of course, what we tried to do in pushing back. But in terms of numbers, in a sense, it is very difficult because we do have little discretion on that, don't we? But it is about what support we as a local authority to provide. And as a local authority, we are in the best position to do that.
Just before, sorry, no, carry on.
Just to sort of come back, could this committee have the groups from the county-wide partnership in relation to what the other areas are doing, just so we know we're not getting too much in one density? And then the other thing you mentioned, Ruth, that it could be a lot of time and effort to go through policies, etc., and that's a lot of work, and I do understand that. But could we have an agreement, if the committee agree, that every policy that comes forward from now on does have a little tick box section to say, how does this work with our sanctuary, it's gone out my head, city of sanctuary criteria? So that is just something that wouldn't take any extra work, really, would it, if it was done with every policy coming forward?
Yeah, so that is the type of thing we would write into a strategy, is that we would have, you know, a bit like our social value policy, we make sure that we consider social value in all of the work that we do. So again, this would be something that we just make sure we've got a sense check on when new policies are coming forward. I think the bigger piece of work is looking at all the current policies, of which I'm sure you know there are many. But, you know, as I've said, it is a piece of work we're willing to do if there is a will from the council to do it.
Pulham, please. Oh, sorry, no, did I get that in the wrong order? No, I didn't. And then Liam. Yeah, sorry.
All right. Go. Oh, thank you. Sorry, you probably noticed I've been scribbling down lots and lots of notes from the debates and discussion.
Hang about. Just check the time. 8:15.
Yeah, no problem. Look, first of all, Cheltenham, Swindon, Plymouth, Bristol, all cities or towns of sanctuary in the southwest. Why isn't Gloucester? That has to be said. And this is policy. This is a motion that was passed back in 2021, 4 years ago. With respect, Councillor Trimdall, you weren't a councillor. Absolutely. Way before your time. So I'm not wishing to point blame there, of course. But I have to say, I am disappointed that you've come back and said that actually we need to revisit this. This is council policy. A motion was passed. So what we're looking from you as the cabinet member is to drive this. Somebody...
Actually, this portfolio has actually gone into Councillor Sarah Sawyer's very recently. So just to say, whatever happens from this evening, I won't be sat here doing the next tranche of this, because it comes under Councillor Sarah Sawyer's.
Okay, but she sits in the same cabinet as you, and there is shared responsibility in the cabinet. So we expect whoever is the cabinet member to be driving this, because it is policy. Let's be honest, you know, particularly what's going on in the world now, city of sanctuary and everything that represents is absolutely crucial. And when you absolutely pointed out, this is about making a safe, welcoming, friendly city for anyone that comes here. You said that you think we are a friendly and welcoming city. I feel that as well. But I want people who've come here as refugees, as asylum seekers, people fleeing conflict, to be able to tell us what it was like to come here, what they experienced, what we are doing right, what else we need to do to improve on that. And that the issue of talking to people who have come here with lived experience, I think, is absolutely crucial. And let's not forget, this isn't just something about Gloucester City Council. This is about the whole of the city, whether wherever you live, which community, which neighbourhood, which voluntary organisation, because there are an awful lot of organisations out there working with refugees and asylum seekers. So there's the whole of that as well. The whole city will become a city of sanctuary. And city of sanctuary, if it were just a badge, with respect, we don't want a badge. We want to know that we are genuinely a welcoming, friendly place for people seeking asylum. And we expect yourself or whoever is the cabinet member to be driving that, please.
I can totally hear what you're saying. And I think we need to just make sure with the network itself, because I know it has gone through changes, hasn't it? And that's the other reason why possibly there's been such a delay in it. So we want to be confident that what we're signing up for is fit for purpose for the future as well. And I think that's really important to say. So, you know, we have to do, I think, like we would in any business as such, is like do almost due diligence on what we're actually signing up for. And I think that would be the proper way to go, really, instead of like just carte blanche, just sort of saying, yes, that's exactly what we're going to do. Yes, let's just put this and that and everything in it. Because I think it's really important to get this right, because I don't want myself or Sarah Sawyer coming here in 6 months' time when there's still not that much work being done because someone in whatever city of sanctuary haven't met for 4 months or something. Do you see where I'm coming from with this?
Where we're coming from is we don't want to be sat here this time next year having this same debate.
Well, that's exactly what I'm saying. So that's why I want to make sure we get this right. And in order to do this right, then I need a general consensus from a very new council that this is definitely the way to go. And if we do that, then I am more than happy, because I am of that way of thinking, to make our city accredited as a city of sanctuary.
Yeah, to that point, I think this is something that we probably should be pressing ahead with. I think Gloucester's a very welcoming place, but that's just what we feel. There are probably lots of things that might come out of this process to identify things we can be doing better to help people. None of us in this room, to my knowledge, are refugees. There's bits in here to like criterion 7, commitment to perform and amplify voices and lived experiences that hasn't been started. There's the strategy around that as well, not been started. There's stuff that still needs to be done to identify what can we do better as a council. We can all sit here and say, yes, we're great, we're welcoming, we believe we are, but this accreditation will make sure that it's not just us around here going, yeah, we think we're welcoming, we think we're great and stuff. It actually puts that rubber seal on it. I appreciate the concerns around, obviously, if there's potential cost implications of this. I think maybe how we move forward with it could be something that comes up to a potential future meeting to say, or to give us some indication of how long this is likely going to take. Do we want this to be something that we put everything behind and get it done in the next 6 to 12 months? Or is this something that we take more of a slow and steady journey over time, depending on what the cost implementation is? But I think it is something that has been agreed previously. I noticed in the press there's been a lot of issues with Western tried doing a very similar thing, and there was huge amounts of public misinformation and pressures, and it became horrible for Western to the point where they just pulled it. I don't want this council to be in a position where we're under pressure from people to just pull stuff and say, no, we're just going to cower to pressure from people. This has already been agreed. We are a welcoming place. We should push forward with it and say, no, we are a welcoming, tolerant city. Get the accreditation to prove it and not bow down to any criticism along the way.
Yeah, thank you, Liam. It was quite interesting just to hear in the presentation that we had in the summer, when the lady actually said about comparing other councils to where we're at in terms of the City of Sanctuary. And I think that would be the first, what we'll take from this, is that we will go and speak with those councils that, as Terry said, have already got this, to learn from best practice in how they implemented it. Thanks, Liam.
Thank you, Chair. The points I wanted to raise, Councillor Harris and Councillor Stephanie Chambers have pretty much gone over. So the key needs to be on the work, and the work is what's important. And if this process shows us where the work is, then we could say it's value for money. But we also have to be really sure that this will actually be good value for money, that we're spending officer time in the best way to actually give us what we really want, which is Gloucester being the best place it possibly can be. So I think reviewing and considering it is actually the right thing to do, but also to acknowledge that we really ought to be on a lot way forward through this, because I was there and I voted for this because it's the right thing. It is the right thing for us to say, actually, we're doing what we think we're doing, we've held up a mirror, and we think we are what we say we are. But we've also got to acknowledge we aren't where we were, and we've got pressures that we didn't have then. So I think, sitting on the fence, you could argue, that we need to see that this is actually going to give us something in return for our investment, and that it's actually going to help us move forward. So I would say we need to just think about it. And if the work that now needs to happen is policy-based, how much will that actually cost us? What will have to drop off for us to do this? And is that the best thing that we could be doing? So I'd like to kind of get a feel for how this fits in with where we are now, what it will give us, and if it's the most realistic and practical use of our precious resources.
Thank you, Anne. I think there will be things that will drop off in order to really consolidate this work in catching up with ourselves in terms of the years that have gone by, in order to then get this through and accredited in a given period. So my suggestion, and I'm looking at Ruth because she only knows the whole structure of the operation side, is that we do this review in undertaking the resource implementation and looking at how much this is going to cost, and also the officer time, and we bring this back in February. Do you have a committee in February?
Sooner,
Sooner?
yeah, please.
So I think if council is supportive of continuing this work, which is what I think it sounds like members are saying from around this committee at least, then I think the next step would be for officers to go away, look at how it can be resourced effectively with a timeline, and then we can take either a report to Cabinet, which can obviously be called to ONS for consideration and recommendation, and then that can obviously be approved by Cabinet as a plan that we're going to take forward with those resource implications and the funding for it, and any unintended or intended consequences to drop other work, if that's what's required, I think that can all be mapped out in a cabinet report. And obviously this committee can then consider that. And I'm pretty sure we can do that by the end of the year. So December cabinet at the latest.
Okay, I'm just making sure Lauren's got that written down. We can do it by the end of the year. That sounds good. Alistair, you've been very patient. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, thank you very much for bringing this to overview and scrutiny. It wouldn't be heard today if it wasn't for yourself, Andrew, chasing that up. So really appreciate that. My concerns with this is that it shouldn't even been questioned today if we should be carrying on with the City of Sanctuary. It sort of makes me raising my concerns that the LGR that Labour brought through motion, which was a great motion about discussing LGR at the last council meeting, was ignored. And that was accepted and won through democracy in council. And yet another Labour motion that's come through that is unanimous is being questioned if it should be followed through. It's already been debated, it's already been gone through full council, and it shouldn't be asked over into scrutiny to dismiss it and remove it. Shouldn't even be a question. So I'm a bit appalled by that, to be honest with you. But I do have concerns around it. I don't know how many people here have welcomed refugees into their home, but myself and Stephanie have. We've had 2 Ukrainians stay with us. We attended their Ukrainian wedding recently. Also had recently a gentleman that was that's transitioned to a woman, and he's now a she. And she left the Russian area of occupied Moldova for being persecuted. And she stayed with us for about 2 months, 3 months while their house looking for a new home. So what I find ironic is there's a lot of people that fly the refugee flag but don't actually do anything about it. And I don't have any concerns around refugees at all, but I do have massive concerns about economic migrants coming into the UK but pretending to be refugees. And Office of National Statistics shows 53% of them aren't actually asylum seekers, but they portray to be them by removing documentation and passports when entering the UK illegally. And that's my great concerns around that. So I think that still is something that needs to be discussed and debated. And I appreciate that's not coming under what we're discussing today. But I agree with Terry and what Terry said. This needs to stay on the table. It shouldn't even be discussed to be taken off the table. And I'm pretty appalled that that's even been discussed. It's going against the point of being a councillor and having full council. It makes that, erodes that away completely and makes it a non-entity, really. So I think it's pretty appalling, to be honest with you.
I think, Alistair, it was simply that this was a motion that came in November 2021. And if you think of what's happened in those years, there's a lot that's happened. So I wanted to make sure that because we are in the council with no overall control, that actually everyone was singing off the same hymn sheet. The last thing I wanted to do at all was to say that refugees and asylum seekers aren't welcome here, they're not deserving of us being a city of sanctuary. That is totally not what I was trying to get at. What I was trying to get at is if we're going to do this piece of work properly and it's not going to just stay on the bench for the next 4 years again, then what I want to do is make sure that the officers are aware that this is a proper piece of work that needs the attention and the detail that it deserves. Is that all right, Alistair?
Yeah, thank you for that. The point is I actually voted for this and it's unanimous. Looking back at it, I probably wouldn't have voted for it because I think it's a non-entity. However, it's been voted through, it's unanimous, and we have to honour that. So still, I appreciate what you're saying, but even though I've got reservations and another side of me would say, let's relook at this, we've got to honour what's gone through council. We have to honour what the previous elected councillors have voted for. And I do think it's pretty appalling to even consider re-looking at it, because I've been pretty upset with the Labour motion not being accepted, the one that got voted through for the September meeting to be discussing LGR. I think that's just eroding what we do as councillors, and I think it's showing that the council is a bit more of a dictatorship than it is of a democracy. Thank you.
Thanks, Alistair. So,
Can I just respond back to
hang
that,
about.
though,
Sorry,
Andrew?
we've reached the hour where we have to decide if we want to show a vote, put our hands up if we want to carry on for another 20, 30 minutes. All those in favour of carrying on because we've reached the 8:30 deadline? Okay, so it's not unanimous, but that's the majority. Okay, so we'll carry on. Will you finish, Councillor? Yeah, cool, thanks.
Can I just come back on
Yeah, of
Alistair,
course.
though, Andrew, just as a response? I think what I also want to make the committee aware, and I'm going to be really honest with you, there will be things that will have to go in order for this within the community wellbeing or within migration or, you know, within the portfolio of Sarah's, because it is a big piece of work and because of the situation with the council in terms of its finances. So, you know, the timeline that Ruth is going to get us to cabinet by the end of December, this will show what does need to come off. And there may be things on there that you're not going to like. So I just want you to all be aware of that, because if we, and I completely sense the enthusiasm to get this through. And I do as well. And I want to see this go through. So it means that it's going to have to be other things that we just won't be able to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I was saddened to read about Western Council's decision. I think actually looking at the criteria, they're ongoing, some of them are completed, only 2 have not been started. Looking at criteria 7, commitment and platform to amplify voices and lived experience. I don't know if you're asking any other organisations to help you with that, but I'm familiar with the work of Voices Gloucester, and I know they've done similar work with not refugees or asylum seekers, but local residents who've got different cultural backgrounds. And I wonder if they or another organisation would be able to help you with that. And the other thing is that I think the list of criteria is quite lengthy. Do you feed back to the organisation to say, you know, that this is actually, I'm sure it could be streamlined a little bit to make it more acceptable to more councils, because it's quite intimidating seeing how it's written. And you know, we're not the only council in dire financial straits. A lot of them will probably be looking and thinking, no, we can't afford to do that. And that's not the reason for not pursuing something that's so worthwhile. Thank you.
Thanks, Angela. I'll let Ruth come in on that with the criteria.
I think the response would probably be that they want to see the commitment shown. So, you know, it's not just a stamp that anybody can get. So, I mean, we do work closely with the City of Sanctuary, and as members are aware that attended the member briefing session, they attended to help deliver that session. So I think they're just very keen that the standard be quite high. So I agree with you. It does feel like there's quite a lot to do still. But I think we've done a lot of the groundwork and a lot of the legwork. So now it's that kind of strategic piece. And I think we can probably make some quite good progress now if we can get the right resources in place.
Okay, anybody else? So we'll go around a second time now, okay? So we've got Steph and you are one. Steph first. So Steph Chambers, thanks.
Thank you, Chair. One of the points I just thought about when we were discussing about the interviews, how do you combat within the interviews the expectations of some of the asylum seekers that have been promised the world by the criminal gangs, and compared to what we actually delivered, what they're promised, we can't match it because they're promised the world, aren't they? How do you manage those expectations, and what work's being done to make sure that's managed without them thinking that we as a country are letting them down? So that point, and I think just to follow on to what Alistair said about this motion not being carried through, I did write down as well that I think it's really important what precedent we set here today. And as he said, this committee cannot override a decision of the council. If policy is to be changed, it has to come back to council. So I think that's important to knowledge. But also I would like to know how much this is going to cost. But Ruth reassured me in actually getting the accreditation is a very small tick box. The work, the actual substantive work, which is what I feel is really important, is where the resource lies. So I just wanted to check it wasn't in the bureaucracy of it. So yeah, they're my 3 points.
So on the interviews, the people that we would be engaging with and have engaged with are already connected to services. So a lot of the kind of the communication and understanding of, you know, what they're entitled to and what the pathway looks like for them has already been done. So I think the role of officers that are going and doing the interviews is listening and understanding that, because I think, again, that's another thing, isn't it, is, you know, how do we understand what people are promised and what their reality is, and then what does that mean for how we then become a city that supports them and a city is welcoming for them. So, you know, we're not going in and making any promises, but we're also not kind of smashing any kind of beliefs about what the world's going to be like. That's not really our role. That's being done on the ground by services that are supporting the individuals and whatever pathway they're in.
Anybody else? Nope. Oh, sorry, Karen. Sorry, apologise.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask, once we've jumped through all the hoops and we've ticked all the boxes and we've got City of Sanctuary status, where do we go from there? Is that something that they come back and assess that we're still doing what we've said we're going to be doing in 5 years' time or 10 years' time, or is it basically once we've achieved that, that's us for forever?
So the expectation is that we'll maintain it, but I also understand that it isn't something they check on. Obviously, that isn't the point. We would want to maintain it if we get it and we put the work in, but we're not going to be examined on a regular basis. That's my understanding. So once we've got the accreditation, the membership lasts for 3 years. So there may be a light touch sense checking of where we are after the 3-year period, but I'm not 100% sure on that.
Ask the monitoring officer for some advice on whether or not this committee, any scrutiny committee, can overturn what was decided by full council, which is where we seem to be heading, by asking for a review to come back to us in opposition to what is an established policy. Just looking for some clarity on that.
Well, you're not making any decision to overturn it tonight. All you're asked, or what's been offered, is further clarification so that you can see the position of the situation more clearly.
I think what will happen is this will come to Cabinet now. So you will see exactly how much this is going to, well, not exactly, because that's really impossible to say, but you will get a good estimation of how much this is going to cost and the staff time and resources. Sorry, if I missed, you're obviously not listening to me. So.
Yes, the door shut itself.
Okay, okay. Wants me to run out of it.
Digress. Where are we, Ruth? What are you trying to tell us?
So I don't think that what we're saying is that we want to overturn any decisions. What we're saying we're going to bring to Cabinet is a proposal for how it's better resourced than it has been. So I think, you know, we could continue to tick this work along with existing resources amongst other pressures, and the reality is it will continue to be slow progress. What I think the committee are telling us is that the progress doing it like that hasn't been good enough, and, you know, we don't disagree. So we're going to put together some proposals, or a proposal for how we might put some more resource into it, how that might be funded, what the implications of that might be, and that will come through to Cabinet and can come to this committee if the committee wants to look at it.
Yeah, I'll be brief. Could I ask that has a range of proposals within it? So if there's a kind of, we drop stuff and put loads of weight behind it, versus if it's to kind of just trickle through kind of options. So obviously you mentioned before about if this gets given a lot of go behind it, other things are going to have to go. Yeah. So we can give a better steer on how well it should be resourced, other than just this is what it's going to take, a few options of what it would take in different scenarios.
I think with the community, sorry, Liam, with the community wellbeing portfolio, there are some really specific things that are being done with specific individuals. Is that the right word to describe it? So it's like there's different work streams in terms of youth, there's food, nutrition, that kind of thing. And it's all these that we're going to have to look at in order to get the officers on board with this, if that makes sense. So this is what will be in that document. But just to say, though, if that document then comes back here, which you will, because you'll ask for it to come back here, then that's where you're going to have to get advice because you might not want to drop any of those things. So, and if that's the case, then the monitoring officer will have to guide you in terms of, because it could then possibly have to come back to council.
Sorry,
Okay,
Chair.
so looking around the table, do we have consensus for moving on along that way? Ruth, apologies.
Sorry, can I come back in on just so that members know what to expect. So when officers prepare a report for Cabinet, we will put forward the best possible option, which is the least impactful on other priorities and somehow balances the finances. So if we can find a way of funding the work, we will absolutely do that, because that means that no other priorities need to get dropped. So that would be the recommendation that we would make. I can't promise that we can find funding to do it, but the recommendation we would make would be, a way of doing this without having negative impacts elsewhere. We would lay out alternative options that we've looked at and say why we've ruled those out. But it's not usual that we would bring forward a range of recommendations for Cabinet to decide on, because our role as officers is to make that single recommendation. Obviously, the committee may have other recommendations that they would want to recommend to Cabinet. But that's generally how the report would look. So there'll be a recommendation with some alternative options that we've considered and why we've ruled them out.
Good way forward. Yeah. General consensus around the table? Do we need to take a vote? I don't think we do. Okay, so you know what's required. We've already booked it into the December scrutiny meeting.
Wants to go again.
You want to go? I thought you finished.
I'm sorry, there was one more thing that I just wanted to make sure the committee are clear about in terms of resources, because although the council does have a role in resourcing theirs, there is a huge ask of the voluntary sector in engaging in this process. And one of the reasons that there have been delayed is, as I'm sure you can imagine, back when this was voted upon, the migration picture was actually quite low numbers, whereas over the last 4 years, it has grown exponentially. And the demands on very small voluntary sector partners are significant. Mm-hmm. So their ability to support a working group and strategy reviews and policy reviews for us has been limited. So although we can add additional resource to support the process, we are still dependent on people that don't necessarily have the capacity. So there may be some delays in terms of the time it takes, recognising that their priority is going to be supporting people directly rather than supporting necessarily the broader picture at the moment. But we'll do our best to kind of work with that dynamic and support our partners as best as we can.
Thank you. Nice note to end on. I think we've still got general consensus for following your path, Ruth. Yep. And we've got that for December. That's really good. Can I just thank all members for the calm and passionate debate? Really good way of conducting business. Okay, so just one more item left, which is item 10, our work programme and the council's forward plan. Members happy to accept that, our work programme? Yep, members agreed? Yep, got it. Thank you very much. And I thought you were agreeing. Okay.
It was just what I raised at the beginning to see why the equality strategy wasn't brought.
I do. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so just to explain that slipped a couple of Cabinet meetings. I believe at the moment it's on the forward plan for December Cabinet, so I've put it on the corresponding ONS meeting for December ONS. We do keep an eye on things slipping, so yeah, if it slips again, we would put it on the corresponding ONS agenda, but it is still on our work programme. We haven't taken it off.
Lauren, so item 11, the exempt minutes. Everybody happy I sign those, please? Yep. All those in favour, thank you. And date of next meeting, we know. And that's it. Thanks everybody just for your patience and your courtesy. And thanks to the cabinet members. Never known the leader of the council be quiet for so long, but well done, Jerry. Thank you.